Hello, my dear friends. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Let us continue with our lecture, and um, I begin the lecture with the stakeholders analysis. So, in the last lecture that we had, I made mention of the four elements of conflict, and I am now discussing the first element, which is the who. So this is a very important, the first step in doing a stakeholders analysis. So who are the stakeholders? When we speak of the stakeholders, these are the men and women or groups who are directly or indirectly involved in the conflict, and they have a significant stakes in the outcome of the conflict. And stakeholders are divided into three categories. So they are stakeholders can be primary, secondary, or interested, or the so-called third, third parties. Now, the primary stakeholders are the groups of people or groups of people who have a direct interest in a particular conflict. While the secondary stakeholders are those people who feel that they will be affected by somehow they will be affected by the conflict, but they think of themselves as not part of the conflict. While the third while the third while the third category are the interested stakeholders. These are the people who stand to benefit from the conflict, but they are not part of the conflict. Yan. So they stand to benefit in the outcome of the conflict, but they are not part of the conflict. For example, as I have said before, like for example, why is the United States taking interest in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process? Because the U.S. has stand to benefit from this relationship. That's why they take a stand, because their economic clout is wide ranging. Okay, so these are the three categories of stakeholders. You have the primary, secondary, and interested. Now, how do we determine how do we determine the primary stakeholders? Because sometimes in some situations, in some conflict situations, the relationship of people are muddled. So they are all mixed up. And sometimes it is so difficult to determine which are the primary and the secondary. Okay, so the first criteria is functionality. So this suggests that those who are directly involved, and then their legitimacy is based on the capacity and ability to perpetuate the conflict. So meaning to say they have the capacity and the ability to perpetuate the conflict. That's the meaning of functionality. Then second, we have the representativity. So representativity means that these people are um, that they represent a large number of people who are directly affected by the conflict. Then third, the moral authority. They have moral authority and interest in peace, and they carry the moral vision of a post-conflict society. So meaning to say, meron silang pangarap, meron silang vision, meron silang gustong mangyari sa lipunan, meron silang gustong mangyaring pagbabago o kaya kabutihan, uh, and that is the basis for their moral authority as a group. So these are the three criterias on how to determine the primary stakeholders in a conflict. Then, of course, you have to understand people and relationships. So identify who the stakeholders are, who are the hidden, and who are the manifest. And which of the stakeholders epitomize the conflict. So which among these stakeholders, sino ba sa grupong ito ang kumakatawan dun sa conflict na yon? And then, what is also the level of polarization of the conflict? Gaano ba kalayo ang kanilang relationship? Malalim ba ang kanilang pinag-aawayan? Uh, ano ba, um, mahirap bang ma-determine ang pagkakasunduan nila, etc. Then fourth is determine the constituencies of the stakeholders. And lima, assess the relationship between the stakeholders and and also try also to determine what is happening with gender dynamics. Okay. Then also try to determine their goal or agenda. What is their goal or agenda? Is it for peace or is it for war? What does the stakeholder hope to achieve? Are their goals open or hidden? Have the goals changed after or on the process of conflict? Are the goals tangible or intangible? What are the goals articulated by men and women? So, kasi minsan halimbawa ngayon yung kanilang mga goals nag pumapalit yan. So, because in the process of conflict, because of the effect of some of the dynamics in conflict, some parties tend to revise or change their goals. Yan, halimbawa, tapos then try also to understand their motivation. Why are they engaged in conflict? For example, in some places in East Africa, in West Africa, for example, there are some rebel groups in some countries there. They appear to be fighting they appear to be fighting for some political purposes, but in reality, it's not really political, but rather it is more out of greed because of the desire to control the gold mines or the mineral resources of a particular region. So those are just some examples that I'm trying to expound to you. You have to determine and examine the motives of the parties in conflict. Then also try to understand their needs, interests, and position. So paano natin ito maiintindihan? I think there's a difference between needs, interests, and positions, but these three are interconnected. They lead to each other. So let's try to understand this from the point of view of an onion ring. So for example, sa isang bilog, you try to draw an inner circle at the middle, a smaller circle at the middle, and that is the core of the circle, and that is where the needs lie. Then you draw again another circle in the middle of the bigger circle, and that is where the interests lie, and the outer circle is the position. So para mas maintindihan mo ang motivation ng mga stakeholders sa conflict, you have to uncover the onion. You have to uncover the onion until you discover the core, because it is there in the core that the key to the solution to the conflict is found. So I'll give you, for example, I think I'll give you one example. Like halimbawa ngayon, yung mga people who are nagrarally sila, for example, nagrarally sila. So pag nagrarally sila, they carry with them different placards, they carry with them different slogans, they are shouting different kinds of slogan. Maybe sabi ng isa, patalsikin siya, ikulong siya, palayasin yung lahat ng mga imperialista dito, itigil yung commercialization, etc., etc. So kuminsan, when you look at the milieu of all this kind of situation, it becomes topsy-turvy and it becomes so muddled, and you are a little bit confused. And itong mga placard nila, itong mga slogans nila, ito yung tinatawag natin na position. So what are positions? Positions are those that we articulate in public. So if you are in a state of conflict, or if you are a party to a conflict, what you say in public, what you shout, and what you declare is your position. But behind the position, there is the interest. Kasi tatanungin mo, bakit may ganyan siyang position? Why is he espousing that kind of position? So what is the reason behind? And the reason behind there is interests. Yan. So, bakit gusto mo siyang patalsikin? Gusto mo siyang patalsikin sapagkat gusto mong ikaw din ang humawak ng kapangyarihan ng gobyerno, di ba? Therefore, yung pagsasabi mong patalsikin, that is your position, pero yung gusto mong mangyari na kayo ang pumalit o yung partido ninyo ang pumalit sa gobyerno, that is your interest. Pero tanungin mo ang sarili mo, bakit gusto mong ikaw ang mamuno? Sapagkat gusto kong maging mas mabuti itong lipunan na ito. I want to take hold on power so that I can reform and make this society better. Yan ang sinasabi mong yan, that is already the need. So ano yung need? The need for a better society, the need for a better future. Yan ngayon, from then on, pag alam mo na yung need ng mga stakeholders, yun ang nagiging susi para makita natin yung solusyon sa kanilang problema. Kasi kung ang alam mo yung posisyon lang o kaya yung interest lang, baka madamay ka pa sa baka makasabay ka pa doon sa milyon nila, sa galit nila o kaya maging emotional ka. So because when the mind of individuals are clouded by emotions, so that is the time that the solution it becomes illusory. Okay? So naintindihan natin. Then, we also have to understand the power base of these groups. Saan ba sila humuhugot ng kanilang suporta? At sino ba ang mga sumusuporta sa kanila? At ano ba ang mga supporters nila? Mayroon ba silang power? Mayroon ba silang etc. etc. Then, also, in order to map the stakeholders, you can make use of this diagram. You can plot the information in this diagram. Pag na-plot mo na yan, you will be able to map the stakeholders. Then also, these are also some of the cross-cutting questions for stakeholders analysis. Among the stakeholders, which ones are perceived as opposed to factual? Then, have you identified the main stakeholders at all levels, the local, the national, the international? Then, are the stakeholders identified a manifestation of the current phase of the conflict? Are there anyone that have been missed because of too much emphasis on this phase? Then, lastly, which stakeholders are rooted in history and which one are seen as important in the future? So, magbabacktrack ka rin and then magpo-futuristic ka rin. Okay. So, you can do that by using this matrix, and filling up this matrix with information will provide you with a better picture of the conflict situation. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and then we will proceed to the next discussion.